I can still remember the smell of cinnamon rolls baking when I pulled into my parents' driveway that Easter morning. The pastel wreath on the door was the same one Mom hung every year, soft pinks, tiny white daisies, a little chipped on the edges, but still beautiful. Inside, laughter echoed from the living room. My brother Tyler's voice carried the loudest, booming with confidence, like always. He was showing off something on his phone to Dad, a new project or maybe a new girlfriend. It didn't matter. Tyler always had something to celebrate. I stood by the doorway for a second, brushing invisible lint off my cream silk blouse, steadying my breath. I hadn't been home in months. Too many busy excuses. Too many unspoken reasons.
Jess.
You made it. Dad's voice filled the room like a trumpet. He pulled me into a hug that smelled faintly of motor oil and aftershave. Then came the moment. He walked over to Tyler, grinning from ear to ear, and handed him a shiny black key fob. You've earned it, son. Congratulations. Outside, gleaming in the sunlight, sat a brand new SUV. Black, polished, and far too expensive. Everyone cheered. Cameras flashed. Then Dad turned to me, smiling the same smile, but softer. He handed me a white envelope. And this, he said, is for you. The room went quiet for a second. I smiled, small, polite, practiced. The paper felt thin between my fingers. And while Tyler revved his engine outside, I sat there with that envelope in my lap, pretending it didn't sting. I was 19, the first time I realized love in our house came with price tags. Back then, Easter wasn't just a family holiday, it was a scoreboard. Tyler always won. New gadgets, shiny sneakers, trips to Florida with Dad. And me? I got, "You're so responsible, Jess," like being the quiet one was some sort of consolation prize. When I told Dad I wanted to study design, not accounting, not business, but design, he looked at me like I'd confessed a crime. "Jessica," he said, setting down his coffee mug, "art doesn't pay bills. You're smart enough to do something real." I remember the lump forming in my throat. I wanted to argue, to make him see the sketches taped across my bedroom wall, the nights I stayed up dreaming of building something beautiful. But instead, I nodded. Because arguing with my father never changed anything. A week later, Tyler crashed Dad's old truck and somehow came home with a new one. I came home from class with straight A's, and not a word was said. That night, Grandma Evelyn found me crying in the garage. She was the only person who ever noticed when I went quiet. She sat beside me, her hand soft and warm over mine. "You have something they don't, honey," she whispered. "You've got roots. You don't need a spotlight to grow." She reached into her cardigan pocket and handed me a small silver locket. Inside was a folded piece of paper with a single line written in her delicate handwriting. "When they give you less, make it mean more."
I didn't understand it then.
But those words burned themselves into me. When Grandma passed away that fall, I wore that locket every day. And a few months later, when Dad refused to co-sign my college loan, telling me I should be practical and get a local job, something inside me finally snapped. I packed a single suitcase, left the house before sunrise, and never looked back. It wasn't rebellion. It was survival. That was the last Easter I spent at home until this one. Leaving home felt less like running away and more like walking barefoot through fire. I had $200, a beat-up laptop, and the locket Grandma Evelyn gave me, the one thing that reminded me of who I still was underneath all that doubt. The first few months were brutal. I worked at a diner during the day and took online design courses at night. My apartment was barely bigger than a storage closet. One window, a flickering bulb, and walls thin enough to hear the neighbors' arguments through. But every time I felt like giving up, I'd touch the locket and whisper, "Make it mean more." It became my ritual, my prayer. Then one night at the diner, everything changed. A woman named Linda Graves came in, sharp gray suit, calm energy, the kind of woman who looked like she ran the world without raising her voice. She ordered coffee and a slice of pecan pie, then noticed my sketchbook lying open on the counter. "You draw?" she asked. I hesitated, embarrassed. "Just ideas." She flipped through the pages. Cafe interiors, logo designs, furniture layouts, my dreams in pencil. Her expression softened. You ever think about doing this for real? A week later, she invited me to help with a boutique renovation project she was managing downtown. It wasn't glamorous, sanding, color testing, floor planning, but for me, it was everything. That first paycheck felt like oxygen. I learned fast. I learned how to pitch to clients, how to price my work, how to negotiate without flinching. Linda became my mentor, my anchor. When she told me, "You've got an eye for spaces people feel in," I believed her more than I ever believed my own father. Within 2 years, I launched my own small interior studio, Monroe Designs. At first, I took small jobs, cafes, salons, budget offices. Then came bigger clients, word-of-mouth referrals, magazine features. I stopped waiting for permission to shine. And while everyone else posted their highlight reels online, I stayed quiet. No luxury photos, no humble brags. My family didn't know how far I'd come, and I preferred it that way. It was my secret rebellion, to grow in silence, to let my success be the one thing no one could measure against my brother's shiny toys. By the time I turned 28, my work was featured in Modern Living magazine. My studio had 10 employees, and my office overlooked the skyline I once only drew on paper. Still, every night before locking up, I'd glance at the framed photo of Grandma Evelyn on my desk and whisper, "See, Grandma? I made it mean more." I hadn't planned on inviting them. Honestly, I thought I'd just drop by for dinner, hand Dad a polite gift, and drive back to the city before sunset. But when Tyler asked if he could see where I was living now, Dad chiming in that he always wanted to visit, I felt something inside me say yes. Maybe curiosity, maybe closure, maybe both. So the next weekend, I texted them the address. When their silver SUV pulled up outside my building, sleek, spotless, probably still smelling new, I watched from the lobby window, heart thudding against my ribs. Dad stepped out first, wearing his usual baseball cap and that confident grin that made strangers like him instantly. Tyler followed, sunglasses perched on his head, phone in hand, taking videos for his social media stories. "Wow," Dad said, looking up at the tall glass building. "You live here?" "Yeah," I said, smiling lightly. "Top floor." Inside the elevator, silence filled the space. Tyler whistled under his breath when he saw the number 32 light up. "Guest design pays better than we thought," he said, half joking. When the doors opened, they stepped into my world. Wide, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the skyline, sunlight spilling across marble floors, minimalist furniture with touches of warmth and color. Every inch of the space felt like me. Dad's eyes darted around, confusion flickering in them. "Jess, whose place is this?" I smiled. "Mine." He blinked, as if I'd spoken another language. I walked toward the art wall, a collage of sketches, project photos, and the Modern Living magazine cover with my name printed across the bottom, Jessica Monroe, designing the future of urban spaces. Tyler stopped mid-step. "Wait, you're that Jessica Monroe?" "Apparently," I said softly, setting down my coffee. "Monroe Designs. The company I built 6 years ago." Dad's voice came out quiet, almost uncertain. "You own it." "I built it," I corrected. "From nothing." The silence that followed was thick. You could almost hear their pride collapsing under the weight of realization. Dad walked slowly toward the window, staring out at the city. I didn't know." "No," I said. "You never ask." He turned to me, eyes glistening in a way I hadn't seen before. "I just thought you were doing okay. I figured you'd tell us if you needed help." "I didn't need help," I said. "I needed belief." For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the hum of the city filled the air. Then I remembered the envelope, the one from Easter. It was still sitting in my purse. I took it out, slid my finger under the flap, and opened it for the first time. Inside wasn't money or a card. It was a small folded note, yellowed slightly at the edges. My breath caught when I recognized the handwriting. "Grandma Evelyn. When they give you less, make it mean more. Love, Grandma." My throat tightened. I pressed the note against my chest, feeling the years fold back into that garage, that night, that moment she believed in me when no one else did. Dad looked at the note, then back at me. His voice cracked. She gave that to you? I nodded.
She did.
And it turns out, I glanced around the room, taking in the life I'd built. She was right. Tyler took off his sunglasses, finally silent. No one said another word for a long while. The city glowed behind us, and for the first time, I didn't feel small standing next to them. For the first time, I didn't need their approval. We sat in silence for a long time after that. Dad stood by the window, pretending to study the skyline, while Tyler sank into the leather couch, scrolling absently through his phone, not posting for once. It wasn't awkward silence. It was the kind that makes people see themselves clearly for the first time. Finally, Dad turned around. His voice was low, almost fragile. Jess, I owe you an apology. He'd never said those words to me before. Not once in my life. I was hard on you, he continued. I thought I was protecting you, teaching you to be practical. I didn't see that I was just clipping your wings. For a second, I almost wished he'd just brag or deflect. That would have been easier to swallow. But hearing genuine remorse cracked something open in me. I took a breath, folded Grandma's note carefully, and set it on the table between us. You can't change the past, Dad. But you can decide who you'll be from now on. He nodded, eyes glistening. Tell me how to make it right. I looked between him and Tyler, my father, who'd measured love in dollars, and my brother, who'd grown up thinking the world would always hand him keys. Start with honesty, I said quietly. Stop pretending money fixes everything. Tyler doesn't need another car. He needs a purpose. Tyler's head snapped up, startled. Jess. No, I said, gently but firm. You're smart, Ty. But you've coasted on being Dad's golden boy your whole life. That SUV won't drive you anywhere if you don't start steering your own life. He didn't argue. He just stared at me, the first trace of shame coloring his face. I turned to Dad again. If you want to help me now, I said, then support what I care about. Not just with words, but with understanding. Come see what I've built. Listen. Learn who I am. Dad exhaled slowly. You have my word. I smiled, not out of victory but peace. Then that's enough. He hesitated, then said softly, You really don't want anything else? No money, no partnership, nothing? I looked around my home. The space I designed with my own hands, the skyline glowing gold through the glass. I already have everything I ever wanted, I said. Freedom, faith in myself, and peace with where I came from. He nodded, shoulders heavy with something between guilt and pride. Before they left, I handed Tyler one of my old sketchbooks, the one from my diner days. Keep this, I told him. Not as a reminder of me, but as a reminder that everyone starts somewhere. He flipped through it silently, his eyes softening. Thanks, Jess. When the elevator doors closed behind them, I stood alone in the quiet. But it wasn't emptiness this time. It was clarity. The little girl, who once begged for approval, was gone. The woman standing here had written her own story, one condition at a time. A few weeks passed after that visit. Easter decorations were long gone from everyone's homes, but somehow, something new had bloomed in mine. Every few days, I'd get a text from Dad. Nothing dramatic, just small things. A photo of his workshop. A message saying he finally finished the shelf Mom wanted built 3 years ago. And once, a picture of him reading a book about design. That one made me smile. Tyler came by the studio one afternoon unannounced. He looked different, quieter, thoughtful. He told me he'd sold the SUV. Said he was using the money to start a detailing business. You know, he said, scratching the back of his neck, something I can actually build myself. I didn't say much, just nodded. But when he hugged me before leaving, it wasn't the usual quick, half-hearted kind. It lingered.
Real.
Sometimes change doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it slips in quietly, like morning light through a cracked window. One evening, after everyone left the office, I stayed behind. The city buzzed below, lights flickering like stars that refused to fade. I sat at my desk, opened the small box where I kept Grandma Evelyn's locket, and unfolded her note again. When they give you less, make it mean more. Those words weren't about revenge or proving anyone wrong. They were about choice. The choice to turn pain into purpose. The choice to make meaning out of what others called less. I leaned back, closing my eyes, breathing in the quiet hum of my life, a life I'd built, one decision, one sacrifice, one act of faith at a time. In that moment, I didn't feel the sting of old memories anymore. I just felt free. Before I turned off the lights, I whispered one last thing toward the sky, like she could still hear me.
Thank you, Grandma.
I finally understand. And as I walked to the window, the skyline reflecting off the glass like a mirror, I thought about that Easter morning, the car, the laughter, the envelope. Dad gave my brother something shiny that day. But what Grandma left me, it carried me through everything. He gave my brother an SUV worth $88,000. But what I found inside that envelope, it was worth my entire freedom.